and Assalamu alaikum, and this is Roop here again with another video of Roop's Brain Dojo. So we decided last time that the next video we will be doing more data types, but based on the feedback that I've received so far from the last video, I understand that you would like to play around a little more with numbers and strings first and learn all those operations first before you move on to the other data types. So that's what we're going to do today. We'll be working with a few of the basic operations that we can run on numbers, and then some basic built-in functions of Python as well that we can use on numbers before we move on to strings and then the other data types. So to start, again, we're going to open up our idle window as always, and we'll be working in the idle window directly for this. If you want to have a record of all of it, you can always do it in a file that I've already taught you how to make. So to start with, let's initiate a few numbers. So let's say x equals 10, y equals 3, z equals 6, okay? And then I want to generate two floats as well that we talked about, or decimal numbers. So let's say a equals 3.142, b equals 9.996. Let's take a longer number for 32. Okay, now these are just random numbers. We can work with any number really. So if we first work on the very basic operations that I also gave as examples earlier as well, but we'll go through them again. So if we use the simple addition function, that's a simple plus sign. So let's say print x plus y, and since both of these are whole numbers or integers, it's going to give you the result as a whole number or an integer. Now let's do the same with a whole number and a decimal. So let's say z plus a. So now it's automatically going to give you the result as a float or as a decimal number. Moving on to subtraction, again simple, using a minus sign. So x minus z. We can subtract floats the same way. So let's say b minus a, and it gives you the number. Multiplication. Now I did tell you that for multiplication, the traditional x that we use in maths, we don't use that on our systems. We use the asterisk sign for the multiplication sign. So print x into y gives you 30. The same way print, let's say into a, again gives you the answer as a float or as a decimal number. Now you notice that these decimal numbers are quite long, and if you want a specific kind of a decimal number, we can figure that out as well. We can round it off, and I'll tell you how to do it. Okay, the next one we're going to move on to is division. So again, the same way, and we use the slash sign for divide. So let's just say x divided by y. Now it's given you the result as a decimal even though x and y were both integers. That's because when you divide them, it does not come out to be a whole number, which is why it automatically changed the answer to a float. Now, if you want to find out what the actual whole number and what the actual remainder for this same division was, what we're going to do is there are two more operations that we can do. The first one is floor. Let's see what it does. So we use a double hash for this. Print. We're going to use the same example, x divided by y. So instead of x divided by y, we're going to do x double slash y, which is x floor y, and it gives you 3. So it gives you the whole number that was supposed to come if you divided x by y. And now if you want to know the remainder, what you can do is you can do print x, the percentage sign, and y. We call this modulus, and what this does is it should give you the remainder. So the remainder was actually 1. So basically 3 multiplied by 3 gave you 9. The total number was 10, so the remainder was 1. So if you don't want your answer as a decimal, if you want your answer as a whole number and a remainder, this is how you get it. There's also one more way of doing this. If you don't want them separately, so what we can do is we can use a built-in function in Python, and which is div mod. So what we do again is print, and in the brackets we're going to write the name of the function first, div mod, and then we're going to give it the two numbers separated by commas, so x comma y. So it's the same numbers. What it should do essentially is give you the answer as a whole number and the remainder. So instead of doing them separately, if you want to do them in one line, if you want your result in one line, this is what you do. You use a built-in function called div mod, which basically combines the division and the modulus. So the floor and the modulus, you're doing them in one line. Moving on, we talked about exponent as well, or power of. So for that we use a double asterisk. Let's just say we want to do, we'll use a simple number, print let's say y, and we want to raise it to the power of 2, and gives us 9. So 3 times 3 is 9. The same way, let's try a bigger power, 3. So 9 into 3 then again is 27. So this is how you can use the power or the exponent. This is how you can calculate any number raised to a certain number of power. Okay. Now, if you want to, instead of using a simple power, what you want is a square root or a cube root. It actually works with the same. And if you know, a square root is raised to the power half, a cube root is raised to the power 1 by 3, and so on. So if you want the square root of the same, what you're going to do is, we're not going to get a square root of any of these numbers directly, but I'll use a separate number. Let's do a cube root or a square root first. That's fine. Let's do a square root for 16 raised to the power, and then we're going to do half. So what this should do essentially is give us the square root of 16, which is 4. Now it's giving us this as a float because that's kind of built in Python as well. If you don't want it as a float, you can round it off, and I'll be showing you how you can do that. Let's try cube root now. So let's say 8 raised to the power. We're going to do 1 by 3 for cube root, and it gives us 2 or 2.0. So these are some very, very basic operations that you can run on numbers, that you can use to play around with numbers. Now again, I've just used a combination of 2 in each. You can use multiple, so you can do a plus b plus c plus d plus e and so on. So it doesn't limit you to the number of numbers that you can add or multiply and all that. And you can actually write quite complex equations in it as well, inside the print command directly as well, to be able to run them and give you the answer. So play around with that a little. I just want to show you rounding off, and then another interesting function that I like. So first with rounding off, so for that the built-in function in Python is round. So again, print, and within that we want to round off. Let's just say we use one of the numbers we did on top, a for example. So within the brackets for round, you're going to write that number first, and then how many decimal spaces you want to round it off to. So let's say I want to round it off to 1 decimal space. So it gives us 3.1. So it basically uses the same concept that we use when we're rounding off numbers using a pen and paper, that we look at the next number. If it is 5 or greater than 5, we add a number. If it's less than 5, we leave it as it is. Let's round off the next one. So print sorry about that, round b, and let's say we round it off to 3 decimal spaces or 2 decimal spaces, your choice. We're going to try both. So this gives us 9.996. If we round it off to 2 decimal spaces, it gives us 10. And that is what's going to happen if you try rounding it off yourself as well. Okay, so we've done rounding off. Again, if you have any confusions, any questions regarding all of these, you can always contact me the way you did last time. You can either write in the comments, send me a message, anything is perfectly fine. Now the last interesting function that I wanted to show you, you probably might not be using it here, or again you might want to just for fun, but it is very useful when you're actually coding. So that's to generate random numbers, and we're just going to learn how to generate random integers for now. So for that, what you need to do is you first need to import random. So in some cases, some functions that are built in directly and you do not need to import them, these again come as a part of Python, but to be able to use them, you need to import them and then use all the functions within. So first you import random, and then you can use this function within random to generate a random integer. There are other functions within random as well, but we're just going to use the one that generates a random integer. So let's say print random dot. So this means it's giving you all the options as well of whatever you can generate using random. But we're going to do rand int. Okay, and then within brackets we're going to tell it a range that we want to generate a random number between, let's say, 0 to 100, and it's giving us a random number. It is obviously running a code at the back to be able to generate that random number, but for us it's going to be a random number entirely. So if we do the same command again, it's going to give us a different random number, rand int, and we do 0, 100 again, and gives us 44 this time. And you could go on and generate lots and lots and lots of random numbers, again depending on your range. If you have a smaller range, there are more chances of it repeating the random number, which can happen even if you're picking up random balls. If you have a larger range, the chances are lower. And then like I showed you, there is a lot more that you can play with using random, and we will be going into those details once we study uh, a little further. So I think that's it for today. I also wanted to do strings, but I feel that that would be too much for one video. So I'm going to make that video within this week, upload it within this week, so that once you're done playing with this should just take you a few minutes. Then you can move on to strings and all the different functions that we can work with on strings before we move on to the next data types as we planned. So again, thank you so much for your time. As always, thank you so much for following the channel. I see that a lot of you have, though I still see that for the people watching the videos, there is still about 65% of you who haven't subscribed to the channel yet. So I would suggest, please do subscribe if you feel the videos are useful and you don't want to miss out on a video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon. Allah Hafiz.